Suffering. Suffering is the name of problems and challenges that we face in our everyday life. It is the feeling of our desires not getting fulfilled. When your assumed pleasures get crushed by harsh reality, cause us terrible suffering. When there is no sense of truth, there is only suffering. Everything that you do in unconscious state will be a state of your suffering. On every aspect of your life, when you desire something, it will lead you to the path of suffering. Because what we desire never happens. We all live a life full of suffering because of our unconscious mindset, expectancies toward our desires, and our never-ending assumptions about pleasures. Psychologically, our mind always needs something to remain busy or to make you feel that you are doing something in your life. That is why I see people use Facebook, Instagram, and other social media portals. Because if in a single moment you remain free, you will start feeling void and empty. If you really focus on your emptiness, you will see that all of your sufferings are temporary and fake. It will also introduce you to your real bliss and pleasure. But your ego doesn't want you to focus internally. It really scares your ego if you start focusing on your sufferings, because paying attention on your suffering gives you the key to beat up your sufferings. Have you ever noticed about your 7 enemies like pride, envy, gluttony, greed, sloth, lust, and anger? In these states, you lost your consciousness and peace. How would you feel if you are peaceless, unconscious, and attentionless? This would be a state of great suffering. But the moment these 7 enemies attach to your desires, you start craving for that state and become completely out of control. Have you ever noticed this? But humans are very clever at giving names. Humans call his sufferings a hope, but in actual, it is a naked suffering. The worst thing is, we never admit that we are suffering. We keep wallowing in false pleasures. Let me explain this with an example. Every day, so many people consume inedible food or substances that are not good for their health, like people consume alcohol, spices, junk food, and animal flesh. While eating these things, you suffer from health problems. Somewhere internally, you know that, but here you don't acknowledge the suffering. You call your suffering now taste because your pleasures are connected with it. This is like a fellow taking all kind of rubbish, like consuming alcohol and being deeply anguished about the price of his house in future. Look at his sufferings for the value of his house. Something imaginary is causing him trouble, but something that is so solid, so direct, it doesn't. Like the alcohol, he just being consumed as a pleasure, he never count it as a suffering. It is also like a cancer patient is crying because of a pimple on his nose. This is how we live. We suffer a lot because of pimple, not because of a cancer. A small pimple is bothering us instead of a cancer. Most of our sufferings are imaginary like this. Also, I see people are confined in wrong places and suffering there, but they still continue to live on. They're afraid of breaching the boundaries. They follow same routine every day, even if they are clearly suffering there, but they don't dare to change the routine because of their imaginary feeling of danger. Somewhere internally, your ego asks you, what would be there for me if I leave the daily routine? But I assure you, whatever would be there would be better than this condition. Here you feel at least the suffering is predictable. Your ego loves to predict the suffering. Your ego afraid of leaving the house of suffering because at his current stage he has an assumed idea of how much he is suffering. But who knows what would be there if I leave my daily routine and do what I really like. Again, I assure you the life will be more blissful and happier if you dare to leave the house of suffering and step outside to live a new life of your own way. After stepping outside the house of suffering, you will see everything new and fresh. But that really scares us. Ego demands for proof that it's okay. If you want to draw me out, that's fine. But give me proof that outside there is something better for me. The funnier thing is, even these proofs that your ego asks is from those who are also suffering in the same house, like your family members, relatives, or your society. How can you expect they had any proof? So no proof. Instead, they start discouraging you, stating, "Are you any special one?" They will tell you, if everyone is suffering, you will also have to suffer because life is suffering. Outside the house of suffering means to start or live a life the way you really want to live. Don't care about what society, family members, or your relatives will say. Just begin and don't afraid. This is the only way to beat up your sufferings.